Is this Georgianne Pamina Yellowbird? Nice to meet you. I'm really glad that you're here today because you need to be hearing this. Not only does the Yankton Sioux tribe and every tribe in this room have every right to be consulted on these matters under existing federal law, they have every right to have all the time they need to look for their relatives, to protect what needs to be protected.
It's way beyond what they, and in the affidavit, they only said 4 fragments were found. And Linda, we have a box full of human remains.
I picked up the phone and I hear my friends saying, you have to come, you have to do something because the ancestors have come back to us and they're telling us that now is the time to fight for our land along the river. She said the river has been pulled back and all of the coffins are literally popping up out of the mud, so the skeletons and the ancestors are standing.
We hope that we will never see another white swan, another North Point. 2 tragic events that occurred in part of South Dakota where the Yankton Sioux tribe has enormous numbers of sacred and cultural places.
You know, mothers with their little tiny children beside them, what the anthros call fully articulated skeletons, where there's just a thin part of the river mud over them, but you can see the head, the shoulders, the ribs, the hips and the legs, and then you can see the babies laid out beside them. And she said the river was coming back up, and in places was literally a few feet, some places inches from the ancestors.
This beleaguered tribe has been just so traumatized by having the White Swan cemeteries become exposed when the waters in the reservoir dropped. And after having been told that those cemeteries were moved and those graves were protected, and finding out that they were not protected and that they, in fact, the contents of those burials were strewn all along the beach.
It looks like they may have put some rock over there, but I don't know how much of a layer of rock there is.
And the situation at North Point, those were they're formerly Army Corps lands that were transferred to the state of South Dakota, and the state of South Dakota went in there with bulldozers in a known area, an area that was known to contain unmarked burials. The Yanktons had been telling people for years that they had ancestors buried there. They went in with a bulldozer and cut those burials in half.
Is that criminal?
Yes, that's criminal. That's shameful. The Yanktons never should have had to go through that.
Well, what they're doing is they're trying to sanitize this whole area here to make another campground. And the very day that we had the standoff, they got all nice and they brought these picnic tables, and then they said that they would keep this so the public would stay out of here, but they haven't maintained it. It's blown away.
These core lands are tribal lands. And within these tribal lands are tribal people who've passed on. And there are sacred items and sacred, these are our homelands, and we have a duty to protect.
It makes me uncomfortable, but the fact is that it has to be done. I mean, you have to deal with human remains because your object is to give the people a better resting place when you're done.
President Roosevelt signed an executive order for $84 million to construct the Fort Peck Dam in October 1933. Within a week of the president's signing, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers opened an office in Glasgow, Montana. News of possible work in Montana spread like wildfire. A tidal wave of hungry, desperate men came to the state in search of work when any pay would have been good pay, and any work, good work.
Grave sites that were formerly out of reach of the water were now swallowed whole. Today, indigenous nations are fighting for their water rights, the preservation of their cultural and sacred sites, and fighting to keep grave robbers from desecrating the final resting places of their ancestors. For over 70 years, federal dam control and exploitation of river resources has devastated the tribal autonomy of 28 indigenous nations. Lands that were lost through the congressional movement of tribal boundaries are taken through eminent domain continues to be developed today, placing these culturally sensitive areas in peril.
It was devastating because so much of the natural resources, so much of the cultural resources of all of the tribes were located in that bottomland area, close to the river, that were most of the trees were, most of the forest products, most of the things in which their native culture was based on. Having to move from an area where you had all the resources that you need for subsistence right there, to go back up further on the prairie where all those things had to either be bought or supplied in different ways or didn't exist anymore.
The Missouri River was formed about 115,000 years ago when streams flowing eastward from the Rocky Mountains encountered the western edge of the Illinoisian ice sheet. These streams were diverted southward until the southern edge of the glacier reached near present-day Kansas City. From there, the river flowed east along the southern border of the glacier through what is now central Missouri. 87% of the basin's 338.5 million acres was originally prairie. The floodplain of the Missouri and its tributaries were a mixture of grasslands, forests, and wetlands. The river was filled with islands, quiet backwaters, and marshes, as well as a main channel of the river. The first formal exploration of the Missouri River began in 1804, with Mary Lewis and Will Clark acting as agents for the United States of America under President Jefferson. Once the fledgling democracy discovered for itself the vast repository of resources unused, they claimed them, without asking and without understanding the relationship man shares with nature.
My name is Elma Mintz, and I am very against many things that the Army Corps has been doing for the U.S. government.
This river is our lifeline. It belongs to us. No more.
And it is not Minnesota, it's Minnesota.
For your sake, and being honest with us, let's put this deception to you.
Leave the river alone. You have polluted it enough. I speak for the elders.
This is not rage. This is survival.
We've been taken for a ride too many years.
We lost a lot above the dams, and we lost a lot below the dam.
Our lands have been depleted. What are they going to do? This river is cutting in more and more, and it's past the mark that you people put up.
Well, I don't think we'll ever get that back.
Water is a source of life. Without it, you and I cannot live. We will die.
The reality of what has happened is this river is almost over-quantified already.
Yes.
By practical usage.
Yep.
And what have we done to really stop that as tribes individually or as coalitions of tribes?
We've looked at the river in terms of the use, and we see a lot of the river being used for domestic water supplies. We're looking at 4 million people using the river for their water supply. Now, these are population areas that will be having severe water shortages in 2025. The rivers that will be in most contention at that time due to the water shortages, the Rio Grande, the Colorado River, and the Missouri River. And this really is putting a new way of tribes needing to look at water. We need to start looking at water as a commodity, not because that's part of our culture, but the other segments of the population are looking at as a commodity. And that means that tribes now have got to start measuring all of their uses now so they can justify future needs. and if we don't, we'll be left short. A lot of the water war is going to be conducted in the courtrooms, and with us proving that we need the water, we have rights to the water, senior water rights.
Whether they're going to the bathroom in it, whether they're drinking and throwing their cans in it, whether the pollution of the gas and the oil in their motor, we drink that every day. And if you look at the overall contaminations of the fish and all the algae and everything, they're working their rear ends off to keep that water clean, but hell, even they're getting contaminated. There's mercury in our waters. It's unbelievable what's in those waters, and it comes right from the intake. It goes right down to the pump house, and it goes in there, and they add their chemicals, and it shoots right into all them pipes.
And when you ask for the description of the river, we're looking at the upper river. The river has been allowed to do the back channels and doing all the oxbows, and it's still has elements of a free-flowing river, and so that's good for the fish and the wildlife. But again, we still got those large reservoirs that do collect a number of pollutants. We're all impacted by the agricultural uses in the area. Down below Gavin's Point, we have what they call channelized, which is basically a concrete situation where it goes from Gavin's Point all the way into the Mississippi River through a very structured environment. That the river is one channel, and that's pretty much due to barge traffic.
Because the river has been channelized from Sioux City down to St. Louis, there are wing dikes that help channelize the river to keep it from doing its normal floodplain maneuvers of, flooding and going back and forth.